Welcome back to the Storyist. Today we're going to go back in time listening to the experts of the past discuss the technology of the aliens that's visited us. Let's start with Bob Lazar, a well-recognized UFO researcher and investigator. He grew up in Turkey and the United States. After graduating high school in 1967, he joined the U.S. Air Force, where he served in the U.S. war in Vietnam, in Laos, and Cambodia for 4 years. Upon returning home, he studied accounting and architecture at the University of Maryland. He then worked for NASA as a mission specialist. If this content you find as addictive as I do, then I hope you subscribe to my channel.
I started out extremely skeptical about this whole thing. I thought this was just rubbish from the tabloids, but I was surprised to find thousands of U.S. government documents from intelligence agencies that tended to indicate that there was a little bit more to this than met the eye. So I went to seek guidance from the various highest levels of the United States intelligence community, and I was quite alarmed at what I was able to learn.
Now, we are, in this report that we're now going to show, we're going to hear a conversation featuring you. Tell me the context of that conversation.
Well, I had contacted Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, who was the head of the National Security Agency in the United States, Deputy Director at CIA, Director of Naval Intelligence, and a variety of intelligence posts, a technologist, and clearly someone that, if this was really accurate, that there really were UFOs and non-human intelligence around, this is a man who had to know. Mm-hmm. So I was able to contact him thanks to a contact through Admiral Lord Hill Norton here in the UK. And this conversation, he alarmingly not only indicated that these issues were covered under national secrecy laws, but that the United States government did in fact have possession of the hardware associated with this. In other words, this was an actual physical phenomenon.
A craft, a spaceship.
Several of them, and they were in operational condition, which I assume suggested that they had been in contact, that they had been given these craft for some reason or another.
Quite often, you will, where these discs are seen, there will be a report of tilting up for a very steep climb, although some of them have been seen to rise almost vertically without tilting. It is now fairly well certain that these things operate with a revolutionary type of propulsion involving an artificial gravity field. I mean, they simply could not maneuver in our atmosphere several thousand miles an hour if they were ordinary vehicles, because they would burn up from friction and they would cause sonic booms that would be heard all over the country.
Because they certainly weren't crashed vehicles.
Anticipate that any of the recovered vehicles would ever become available for technological research outside of the military circles?
Again, I honestly don't know. 10 years ago, the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
Whether as time has evolved, they're beginning to become more open on it, is a possibility.
A short time later, Bob Lazar received this call.
Mr. Eckler, this is Tom King in Admiral Inman's office. Yes, you would be breaching confidence and or violation of the secrecy laws and discussing his involvement in any matter.
Anyway, everything is relative, actually. Like I say, you're on Earth, you don't feel the motion. With all this great speed that we're actually
does this apply
in existence, not to a UFO, to the people in the flying saucer, whoever controls it, everything is relative to them. In other words, as we are relative to the Earth, they are relative to the flying saucer. As that flying saucer makes a 90-degree turn, it doesn't affect them just as well as we're not affected by us traveling through space at the great rate that we are. Now, I don't know if this can be easily seen, but if you stop and think about it, it's true. You can consider the flying saucer as its own little Earth, with its own gravitational field, and it's traveling through space. All of a sudden, it makes a sharp turn. Well, everybody inside that ship...
Let me interrupt a second. Could it be like, for example, you've seen these little balloons that they sell to children. It'll be a balloon inside of a balloon. Inside of that balloon, they'll have a little picture of Mickey Mouse, maybe. Is this like the Mickey Mouse inside that balloon would be like the spaceship inside this gravitational field that it's creating?
Right. You could look at it that way. So basically, that's it. As you are to the Earth, somebody is to this ship.
What creates this gravitational field?
Well, as far as this creation of the gravitational field, it could be one of many things. Now, One possible theory was, and this is proposed by a few scientists, I've read this before, that like that principle that I told you, that you could take a vacuum chamber, and it's possible this has been done in a laboratory. You have two huge magnets with a terrific coulombs of energy passing through them. You have a little metal object in there, and it will suspend itself in midair. Now, if this was applied in reverse onto the ship itself, it could be deflecting the Earth's magnetic attraction. Now, one thing that's more or less possible proof of why these ships work on magnetic attraction, and it would be specifically of the Earth and not another planet, is this, that I don't know if you noticed or not, but the recent reports on any flying saucers around this area, most of them will be in Akron. There's a reason for this, because
why is that?
Near Akron, or well, not far away from Akron anyway, I don't know the exact mileage, but a geophysicist or somebody on that line could probably tell you that there is a magnetic fault running through the Earth at pretty close to Akron, or in that area anyway. And magnetic faults are lines of specific intensity, a little bit greater intensity than other places. In other words, like the, latitude or longitude running from the north to the south? Longitude. Well, you could consider those like the longitudinal lines, only they're not really. But they run from north to south. And as you pass to this point, or to this line, you are going to a point of greater magnetic attraction. And this has been picked up by satellites recently, and it's data. And you go to one magnetic, you can see by instrumentation, you have a greater magnetic attraction as you approach this line. As you go away from it, it fades out. You go to the next line, it comes in again. It increases.
Well, actually, this whole thing of creating its own gravitational field around it may seem completely far-fetched and everything, because this is like a mode of transportation carrying its own mode of transportation. But yet, there was the day when everything was done by oneself, transportation was done by something living, an animal of some kind, when it did look completely ridiculous to ever think of a machine that would actually move without a human being pulling it. An automobile, ridiculous.
We've all seen the typical flying saucers from the 50s, but now we're seeing glowing orbs known as plasma balls. Here's a recent piece of very clear footage from a Whizzles 54 account that's really extraordinary, documenting this anomaly outside his home. One has to ask themselves, why would what appears to be a military helicopter be flying with it?
I just witnessed an orb being followed by a helicopter. Watch this videos right over my house.
I heard what you said earlier, but obviously the big problem always is the pictures are never conclusive.
The pictures, yes, are not conclusive, but when you get involved in an investigation and you find the extraordinary physical evidence left behind, and you talk to the witnesses, medical doctors, officials of governments and so forth, and one of the cases that we had just seen some video from, there was a Canadian official who was actually taken on board the craft. When you subject these areas of testimony to lie detectors, polygraph exams, using the kind of technology that we have to determine whether someone's actually telling the truth or not, the results become absolutely nothing short of alarming.
Okay, if these governments, the Canadian government, the American government, if they are in possession of spacecraft, if they have made contact with aliens, why don't they tell us?
What I was able to learn is that the issue of secrecy dates back into the early 1950s. And in 1959, actually, NASA had a study conducted by the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C., addressing the issue of whether this alarming issue of a confrontation with an extraterrestrial culture should be released to the public, this information. It was determined that there would be grave consequences for just an overt public pronouncement by government officials. So a determination...
What does that mean? We would all panic?
Well, not necessarily just panic, but the issues that it presented, not only theology, but issues involving economics, standards of monetary concerns. If you acknowledge type of technology that renders fossil fuel-related industries obsolete, yes, for example, you have grave consequences economically all the way around the world.
Today, all our values are rendered
so the determination was made that the only way to avoid this chaos would be through a slow indoctrination process over a matter of decades.
Here's another piece of interesting evidence that took place in Medellin, Colombia only a few days ago, from an account named Vive Cristiano.
Este tiene super forma de navegación, ¿sí o no? La conciencia. todos tienen como triangulitos, formas triangulares. Ay, Dios mío. Bueno, por lo menos desde este punto de vista. Sí. Reportando. ¿A qué está aterrizando?
See the airplane going past them?
Ahora, cuidado. Sí. Ahora. Mira este chama que hacia lo loco, míralo. Mami, mira cómo se mueve, como un bicho. Y da como vueltas, mami, da viendo. Este.
Here's another angle she took, and you can see her in the shot. The final shot is the crafts after zooming in. These are certainly not the same saucer-shaped crafts we've heard about from earlier cases.
No, dangerous.
You really believe? Have you had a close encounter, as they say, or have you seen UFOs?
Well, I wouldn't really call it a close encounter. I think it has more to do with the contacts I've had with the U.S. intelligence community and being a technologist, being called in to analyze various video films and photographic evidence. It's quite conclusive to me. I have, in fact, seen with my own eyes on quite a number of occasions, well over 20, at very close range, a number of these vehicles. It's quite extraordinary technology. Anybody interested in technology would be, it's like a kid in a candy store, really.
And there's no way that you could be mistaken and it could have been an airplane, helicopter, or something of that nature?
Admiral Inman convinced me that these vehicles were not manufactured by human technology, so that's pretty conclusive for me.
Do you think, though, that the government know this is happening, know that it's going on, but why don't they want the rest of us to know? Why do they not want that?
Yes, you are correct. The government, many governments around the world do in fact know. In fact, NATO conducted a study in the 60s involving quite a number of these incidents. The decisions to maintain secrecy regarding this center more around not upsetting the economic apple cart, religion, theology issues that come into play, and quite a number of issues that essentially center around science and technology. We do have to come to grips with the reality that perhaps human beings aren't the only intelligence in the universe, and that they have in fact been here to visit in spite of projects like the NASA SETI project, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence in deep space. There are serious issues associated with this, and we have a mentality where we like to kind of poke fun at the issue through tabloids and so forth.
And like this kind of thing, this is what we perceive an alien to be like.
Well, these are actual photographs taken from a case up in Canada that have indeed been authenticated by a Canadian government official who was taken on board the craft and apparently had some form of telepathic communication with the occupants, the pilots of the vehicle, as you might say. They are different than us, but it's interesting to note that they are humanoid and that they have 2 arms and hands and 2 eyes and so forth. They're quite much like us, only in significant ways they're different. Of course, if there's one that comes, there's obviously going to be more, and just like we have different species of humans on this planet, I'm quite certain there's different species of alien life forms. So we could run into malevolence. In fact, President Reagan on several occasions alerted concern about the potential hostilities from outer space and why it would be important for us to work together on this planet with superpowers and so on uniting. Clearly, the problem that we're confronted with here is that although technologically these these beings may be more intelligent than us. We appear to be more advanced in areas of civility. We have emotions and things like that, and we have concern for our fellow man, whereas that doesn't seem to be the case necessarily in some of these other cultures.
Bob, thanks very much indeed. It does seem strange that we can't get on with one another in this world, so you wonder whether we will get on with aliens, but thank you.
Right, thank you.
It's truly a remarkable progression we've seen with these crafts. We now have seen everything from tic-tac, shaped, cylinder, and saucers. Up until recently, these have been the limit, but now we've been introduced to floating balls of plasma. The question of traveling light years to reach us has seemed impossible to many who have claimed to debunk these incidents by explaining no craft or alien could travel that far within a reasonable amount of time. I leave you now with a 1991 presentation from the famous physicist Bob Lazar, explaining the theory of space travel these crafts are thought to use.
We know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so in our universe we've always assumed that the fastest way from point A to B was to travel in a straight line at the speed of light. Well, the fact is that when you're dealing with space-time and you enjoy the capability of generating an intense gravitational field, the fastest way from point A to B is to distort or warp or bend the space-time between point A and B, bringing point A and B closer together. The more intense the gravitational field, the greater the distortion of space-time and the shorter the distance between points A and B. Most of us think of space-time as the void or as nothing. And remember, it wasn't that long ago that man considered the air in our atmosphere to be nothing. Yet with time, we've become aware of the elements and properties of the air in our atmosphere. Well, indeed, space-time is an entity, and one of its properties is that it can be distorted or bent by a gravitational field. We know that gravity bends or distorts space-time and light by virtue of the fact that we're able to see stars which we know should be blocked from our view by the sun. Referring to the graphic here, the solid line denotes the position of a star that's located behind the sun, and the dotted line shows its position as viewed from Earth. This is made possible because the sun's gravitational field distorts the space-time and light around the sun, allowing us to view stars which should be hidden from view. We know that gravity distorts time by virtue of the fact that if we take two identical atomic clocks and keep one at sea level and take the other one up to a high altitude, when we bring them both back together, they reflect different times. The difference in this passage of time is caused by the fact that a gravitational field weakens the further you get from the source. So the atomic clock which was taken to the high altitude was exposed to a less powerful gravitational field than the clock which we kept at sea level. The effect of a gravitational field on space-time is something that we've been able to observe, but not to experiment with. This is due to our inability to generate a gravitational field. And up until this point in time, great mass such as a star, planet, or moon was the only source of a discernible gravitational field that we're aware of. So just as the gravitational field around great mass such as a planet distorts space and time, any gravitational field, whether naturally occurring or generated, distorts space and time in a similar manner. Now, the great benefit of generating an intense gravitational field is not only can you turn it on, but you can turn it off. If we refer back to our original illustration of space-time distortion, we can see that when we generate an intense gravitational field, we can distort the space-time and in turn the distance between the point where we are and the point where we want to be. We can then position ourselves at the point where we want to be and then stop generating the gravitational field, allowing space-time to return to its natural form. In this manner, we can travel great distances with little linear movement. And this is how space-time distortion translates into reduced distance. Now back to our original question, how is it possible to cross the vast expanses of space required for interstellar travel without exceeding the speed of light? This is accomplished by generating an intense gravitational field, distorting space-time and allowing you to cross many light years of space in little or no time and without traveling in a linear mode near the speed of light.